mountain, Shenandoah River. Life is old there, older than the...
My experiences with the landowners has been very similar to a lot of the partnerships here that we've had. We show up on the site and they're devastated. They have a real problem here, no access to their homes.
A lot of people around here in these smaller communities, they'll throw a culvert pipe in there and use that. The first time you have a big rain, a tree comes and blocks that stream, tears that out.
And we show up and we start looking and we're poking around and engineers are looking and logistics are talking about, and these folks are skeptical. And then the ball starts getting rolling and construction starts happening, and they're out there every day watching what's happening. Not one stone gets turned, not one board gets nailed that they're not watching. And then at the end of the project, bring them access to their home, and they're overjoyed. Totally overjoyed.
3 years ago, 1st of November, I had a steel supplier call me and he said, Billy, he said, you need to come down here. I've got some Mennonites wanting to build bridges. I thought he was crazy. We looked the plans over and he said, can you do this? And I said, yeah, pretty easy. They slid the plans over to me and said, make it happen.
Well, like most momentous things that I get involved in, it generally starts with a call from the governor's office. And this one was no different. Our Director of Homeland Security, Jimmy Janetta, contacted our current secretary at the time and asked if we could provide a little technical expertise to a group that wanted to build some bridges. And not knowing what to expect, Secretary Maddox at the time gave me that assignment and made contact with the folks. So that was my first experience with folks that want to do the impossible.
A fun thing to help people out. Everybody needs some help sometime. And so here we are 3 years later, 50-some bridges later, and we're still going.
This bridge is 37.5 feet long. We're 12 feet wide here. There's a lot of rebar. There's a rebar cage that's down here that has to be built before we pour into. So there's a lot of things that are hidden. We dig down and pour the 2-foot footer in. But the things that you don't see in that footer are 4-inch steel pipe that are they start out being about 10.5 feet long. We drive them down to bedrock. Take a 4,000-pound jackhammer on the end of the backhoe and pound them down until they won't go anymore. Then fill them full of concrete, and that way the footer is solid. It can't sink, it can't settle, and it can't wash away.
If you look at most of the bridges, you'll see the abutments on the ends washed out. These bridges are driving the pipe down to bedrock, and you can see the abutments on it. These bridges will last.
And we stay out of the creek, back in the bank, so that water normally will not affect it at all, and we're not blocking the stream. So that gives it a good solid foundation, which we need, and then set the I-beams, and then this particular bridge with 2 I-beams. Normally we will build a bridge, start on Monday, and have dedication by Friday afternoon. That is if everything is set up and goes like it should. The other challenging part about building these bridges is that, as you've noticed, you've been hearing in the background all the cars going by. We're on a very busy road here. Fortunately, we're about 35 feet off the edge of the road. We've built bridges to where we've been within 1.5 to 2 feet from the edge of the white line. So managing the traffic, trying to back in here with a trailer full of rock and being out and having the highway blocked.
Another unique part about the bridge project is that you get to see the very start of it and often the very finish of the project. The building relationships with the neighbors is another important aspect.
The camaraderie, as well as on the job site, but in the evenings in our housing as well, to me is a very important part. The neighbors get all excited about it. The man next door up here let us borrow his backhoe for a couple days, which was a lifesaver on handling these large beams.
Well, I think the future of the bridge building program in West Virginia has already surpassed everyone's wildest dreams.
West Virginia, Blue Ridge Mountains, Shenandoah River.
Probably the biggest issue involved with building a bridge is that you are going through a waterway. A waterway has very many restrictions when you're building. First of all, it's anything you do in a waterway can affect the flow of water, creating flooding upstream if it isn't done correctly. You might be harming endangered water species, just flow of the river sort of issues. So the permitting process is very involved. And for a small bridge even, can easily take half a year to do. So probably the biggest obstacle to overcome was how can we speed up this process for these residential bridges where people needed to get into their house this week. We cannot wait 6 months to build a bridge. And so that took the working together with many of the different agencies, whether it was FEMA, the Army Corps of Engineers, the environmental protection people, the hydraulic agencies. So coming up with the guidelines for this construction involved getting them all on board to see how can we simplify this process. And so we've gotten this process down from a 4 to 6 months, probably down to usually between 2 or 4 weeks, because all this stuff has been worked through.
Well, I think the future of the bridge building program in West Virginia has already surpassed everyone's wildest dream. And we slowly worked and tugged and pulled as a group, as partners, with many partners, to start to make this a reality. And we have come up with guidelines and a process and a way to team up with folks to literally do the impossible. And it's almost routine at this point to where it's done.
The motto for our company is that we want to do engineering that other engineers do not want to do. Either because it's a social cause that they're not interested, or there's not enough money to be made by it, or that it's too risky for some reason. But if we think the risk is worth it because of the social good that it's doing, we want to be involved in it.
Do everything we can. We provide any type of support and expertise that we can. I think my greatest role was just that first field trip that really turned the corner to make the impossible hopeful.
Take me home.